Christine, welcome to the Live the Width of Your Life podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. So excited. And you said you're dialing in actually from Berlin today.
Yes, that's right. That's where I was born and bred in Berlin.
And where do you live today? Where do you live currently?
I live in North Italy. I live near Milan in a small town, but it's strategically it's really good location because it's close to the airport, it's close to Switzerland with all the mountains, it's close to all the lakes in Italy, it's close to France, it's close to the beach as well. 2-3 hours by car, but still, yeah. So that's where I live today.
Oh, that's wonderful. I always envy folks that live in Europe because you can get to anywhere that you want to go with planes, but also with trains. And it's just so beautiful and scenic.
Very true.
How wonderful. Did you intentionally choose to move to Italy?
Yes, probably. I manifested it,
You
kind of.
did?
Yeah, I did. So I did leave Germany 14 years ago. I lived in the UK for almost 10 years, and I moved to Sweden. But I always wanted to live in Italy. I put everything in there, even all kind of things that I was creating digitally, and I was trying to create, finding Italian friends to start making connections to that country. And I found my future husband, which is Italian, and I moved there actually for love. So that's how it
Oh.
worked out.
I love that it worked out the way you were hoping. And so, for those that aren't as familiar with you, tell me a little bit more about your background. I know I've
Mhm.
shared that you are an entrepreneur, you're an author, but tell me a little bit more about your passions and the things that you
Yeah,
love.
of course. Yeah, so like you said, business-wise, if we look at that, and location-wise, you already know everything now. But yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur. I actually support entrepreneurs for more than a decade with my Creative Startup Academy, and I support big organizations with better communication. And that's not to communicate only to the world, but with yourself and with your team. So going into leadership development. And I think that is really something, everything in life for me comes down to communication, everything, all the issues and all the solutions as well. And that's why I focus on that. And that's why I can see that as like a thread going through my life as well. And everything that I'm doing is about that with communication. What lights me up is really working with people and constantly learning. I'm one of these people who can't sit still and always needs to soak up new information. I'm still learning to do nothing from time to time. Living in Italy, that is helpful. I'm not saying that's a stereotype, of course, but it does help. It's a very different culture to the German culture. So that is something that I'm passionate about, meeting people, maybe inspire people, get this energy out there, and I'm feeding off people's energy as well. I think most people suffered a bit during what happened in the world now 4 years ago, pretty much, where we weren't allowed to see people. I'm a hugger, I hug, but doing things, creating things, constantly exploring. This is what I like.
So good. Is that something that you always had in your life? Were you always so curious about exploring and just meeting new people, trying new things?
Yes, I think so. My mom tells me, and I remember some of the bits from my childhood as well, because I was always writing short stories. I was reading a lot. I was doing a lot. I traveled, discovered a lot also by myself with backpacks, and also wasn't afraid to try new things in my career, let's say. Actually, after school, I did 3 years worth of internships finding out what I don't want to do until I found what I wanted to do. And then I did that. And then I said, you know what? It's not what I want to do anymore, and then started my own thing. So yeah, it's this curiosity is, I think, something that goes through all my life. Everyone tells me, at least that know me.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me more about your Creative Startup Academy. How long have you been doing that, and who or what types of clients typically participate?
hmm Okay, so it's something that evolved, of course, because it's about 13 years ago when I started this whole thing. I started off with one-to-one coaching. So I trained as a neurolinguistic programming practitioner. So that's all about communication as well. So understanding the brain, understanding yourself, how do you communicate better? And then I trained as a coach and didn't know what I wanted to do actually with that. I just knew that's something that I was interested in. Still had a full-time job in a design agency. also communication there. And yeah, it just happened that I started working with entrepreneurs, and that's how that developed. So I started with one-on-one coaching, and I did some online courses, and then I started creating an online community because I could see the value of having a community in some way. Again, it comes down to meeting people to support each other, to share challenges, because in the end, if someone is an entrepreneur, we all go through the same stuff. Every single one will come to a specific point that everyone has been or will be, no matter the industry, no matter what you actually offer. So it has developed into this Creative Startup Academy, which is basically a membership-based platform where you can sign up. And there's even a free version for people because I'm a big believer of giving back and supporting as many people as I can. And there you get all kind of resources that you have available 24/7, like online courses, 7-day challenges, how-to videos, and things like that. And also I go live twice a month, so people can ask me questions, or we do some co-working together. There's, of course, something where you can ask questions in between, something like a Facebook wall, but it's not on Facebook because it's all on that one platform that I created on my website, and all kind of other things in there. So there's fully packed with everything that I developed basically over the last 13 years. I put that together in a bundle so that people can access it easily and pick out the bits and pieces they need in like 3 pillars. So starting out, marketing and the health and well-being as well, which I added about 2 years ago.
It's so good. It's so important to be part of a community as an entrepreneur because it can get so lonely. And
Yes.
so, did you have a community or a mastermind or something that you were part of when you first started off as well?
Yes, I would say so because I'm that outgoing person, and like I said, I love meeting people. So I always, from day one, I went to networking events and I found groups that I really like and continued meeting them on a regular basis. So created, let's say, a real life community. Wasn't so much online. I tried a few, but it was a bit difficult with the ones I found. And so I always have a network. And I always believe that's the most important thing. If you're an entrepreneur, you need a network and support. And since everything went online, actually, also that has developed more online as well to be part of a specific community.
And I love that you added the health and wellness piece a couple of years ago, you said to your academy. And I'm seeing more and more, even with my own coaching, of course, that's a large part of what we do and we talk about. But you had your own personal wellness journey. You had something
Mm-hmm.
that happened with a diagnosis that happened to you. Can you talk a little bit about what happened and how does that impact the way life and
Yeah.
what changed?
When I was 19, I started having tinnitus, so that ringing in both of my ears. That's usually stress related as well, and it didn't go away, and I have it since. And I tried everything back then, all the treatments, everything, even injections, oxygen therapy, everything. Nothing worked, of course. The only thing that did work a few years back was mindfulness as well, and meditation and slowing down, actually. I'm saying that because of that, 20 years on, I went to a ENT, so ear, nose, throat doctor, because I thought maybe there's some new things that can be done. And they said, oh, we're going to do a scan of your head just to make sure that nothing's wrong with you. I went to these scans, which I really didn't like because I'm also a bit claustrophobic, and that was really horrible. And basically 2 weeks later, he said, oh, good news. Everything is good. Everything is fine with your ears. There's nothing wrong there. But you have a brain tumor. I just didn't understand. I don't know if I would have understood in German because that's my mother tongue, but I was in the UK, fluent in English, no problem, but these medical terms, maybe even other native speakers wouldn't understand. So I wrote everything down. I did what you should never do. I Googled what that is and thought, okay, that is it. And I had to do lots and lots of tests and other scans and blood tests because what it said is it's on the pituitary gland. So I had to go to an endocrinologist, basically. Yeah. They took lots of blood and tests and other scans. And I think about 3 months later, I had the results of everything. And they said, oh, good news. It's actually not a brain tumor. So it basically was a misdiagnosis, but obviously it shook up the entire life and how I see things in a good way. So obviously in hindsight, I believe also, as always, that everything happens for a reason and there's a positive spin that you can take on almost everything in life. And I did that on that because it made me reprioritize everything it was a time where I was very close to burnout anyway, because I was really overworked and I was working at least 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And all of this made me stop, slow down,
Yeah.
but not from one day to another, because of course you can't just go from one extreme to the other. And coming back to that question, how that changed, it was like, okay, there is really things like that can happen, diagnosis like this, or even worse, if it turns out to be a real thing, or something other happens in life where someone close to you dies or something. And usually that's the moment when people wake up and think, okay, I need to do something in life. And that's also my message. Do not wait for that to happen, because you can
Yeah.
change whatever you want. It's really funny how priorities can shift, isn't it? It's always, oh, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, until something like that happens. And then all of a sudden you have time for everything. So you can make time, you can do what you want to do in life, and do not have to wait for that to happen.
How old were you when you got this misdiagnosis?
35, maybe 36.
Yeah. So young. So you were working, did you say 16 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Yeah.
So how long after this happened and then you were reshifted your thinking about things, did you decide, okay, I need to move and I want to manifest a new life?
No, it was during that time probably even, and then right after that, I started making changes. But again, it's not so easy, because first of all, you're in that rhythm to do that.
Yeah.
Then you have also built something that requires you to do that. So what I did, for example, I said, okay, I'm going to try not to work in the evenings anymore, so to have shorter days. And
Yeah.
then I was like, okay, I'm going to have a lunch hour. I'm going to take lunch, not in front of the computer because I'm replying to emails. I'm going to take
Yeah.
lunch outside off a screen and go out and make
Crazy
that little
concept.
walk. Crazy. It's crazy. I know. And then I was like, I'm not going to work on Sundays. And then I was like, oh, I'm not going to work on Saturday. And then I've met also my now fiance. And so even before that, I was still working a bit, let's say also Saturdays, for example, because why not? But since I'm with him and he has a job where he's employed and he's working starting around 8 o'clock and finishing at 5, so do I. So I have a 8:39 start and I finish at 5, and I do not work on weekends. But it took a long time to get there. And like I said at the beginning, I'm still learning also to do nothing, because my brain is always going like crazy, even with ideas of everything I want to do. So that's that.
Isn't it amazing how we can establish new boundaries for ourselves when something so shocking happens?
Yes.
But like you said, why do we need to wait for something to happen to us or to someone that we care about in order to wake up?
Yeah, there's a thing that I would like to suggest to people, because sometimes, I don't know, it's something probably that happens in the brain to, you need that shocking moment. I know someone who's done a death meditation, which is basically you do a meditation on what it's like when you're dead and you're gone and things like that. And that is like a little thing that you could do to wake yourself up, even though nothing has happened in real life, really, to pretend and trick your brain, let's say, into that state of, okay, I need to do something now, and I need to live the life that I always said I wanted, that I'm not doing because I blame others, or I blame a job, or I blame I don't have money, or whatever, that you can't do. You can.
You absolutely can. It's so interesting. I've never heard of the death meditation. I've heard that people sometimes they spend time like meditating on thinking about the legacy they want to leave behind or thinking through that, but that's fascinating. But you also started studying happiness as a result of this. I
Mm.
know that you have your journey led you to something called a happiness formula. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes, exactly. Like most people, oh, we want to be happy, but what does it really mean, and what does it mean for each one of us? Because I think that's the very first thing to recognize, that it means different things to different people. One thing that came up for me, so what I did, I read all kind of books on happiness that are already out there. I did health and well-being courses. I became a certified happiness facilitator. Everything I could do around that topic to see what that means, I tried to soak all of that in. And then, because I'm a very, let's say, I always have systematic approaches to when I transmit information to other people, I like to put that into something that they can work their way through, because that's the way I like to do it. And that's what I've done before with other topics. So I decided to create the happiness formula, So I came up with this formula, like I said, that will help you. And one of the things that really stood out of me of everything is to understand that happiness is not the same thing as joy. And if you want to be happy, doesn't mean that you cannot be sad, because we all have that. And that's, I think, sometimes also a misconception. Oh, but yeah, sometimes I have really a bad day, or even if we dwell on things that we shouldn't, which is not helping our happiness and our joy, let's say, but we can still be happy, because happiness is that underlying base. I don't want to say contentment, but it is being happy, because the way you're happy with who you are, and you're happy with the life you're living and the people you surround yourself with, and what you do also for others. And it doesn't mean that you cannot be sad. It doesn't mean that you cannot be angry. It doesn't mean that you cannot cry or shout or whatever. It just means, actually, if someone asks me, are you happy? The answer should be yes, because at the moment, maybe not because something bad happened, I'm sad, but overall, I'm happy. I'm a happy person. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important to ask the questions and just to create even that activity of saying, checking in with yourself and saying, am I fulfilled? Am I happy? Am I content in this moment? What could contribute to that in a different way, which I think is so important and we don't
Mm.
do very often. Tell me a little bit more about your book, because I know that you've also are a public speaker and a podcaster, and you've written a book as well. Tell us more about your book and why you wrote it.
Yeah, actually, so far I've written 21 books. But
21?
yes, I just published actually my
Wow.
first children's book. It's trilingual to help
Yes.
children to learn new languages. But the one book that we were talking about is the happiness formula, of course, as well. So all of that, what I said, I've put that into a book. So it's called the happiness formula. It's available in German and in English, and I'm just working still on the Italian version. It's taking a bit
Mm.
longer. It's available on Amazon. So the formula is an acronym, because again, I like to make it easy and also follow along. And the acronym is SMILE, because a smile is contagious, and I like that. So what it stands for is start your journey, make sure you're ready. It's implant happiness into your brain, learn about the models, and engage with the tools. And
Mm.
I just, like, in a few sentences, I'll just say a bit more about it. So start your journey is about understanding what happiness is, what it isn't. So again, for example, the difference between joy and happiness. What does it mean for yourself? So you start exploring that. It comes with a lot of questions. So it's like a workbook. And actually, people tell me always, wow, it's so good that it's in the book. I'm writing in that book, because you make space for that as well. So that's what
Perfect.
I've done. Then we have make sure you're ready, and there we go into a bit of neurolinguistic programming techniques as well, overcoming obstacles, setting goals for yourself. Implanting happiness into your brain is where we go into the science and the biology of happiness. So what the science have to say about it, and what happens in your body, and the happiness hormones, and all of people might have heard of. It's about building habits. And then, of course, I'm not the first one who's writing about happiness. There's so many models out there, also officially, and I've looked at some and explored them in that book as well, to give people some other ideas as well, even though they all come down to the same things. I think everyone has their own spin on it, like I did. And then the last one is engage with the tools, where we look into gratitude, meditation, affirmation, visualization, these kind of things that you can do. I recorded a lot of meditations, so there's a lot of interaction as well. There's a page where people can download a gratitude journal and things like that.
Oh, that's so beautiful. When did you have time to write 21 books? That is so amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I got a bit of a book bug, let's say, because the first one took me quite a long time, and then once I did the first one, the other ones just flowed, because I think 2016 I started writing my first book. So that was the first one was published, and then since then, my God, that's already 8 years. I published basically the 21 books.
That is so amazing. Do you write every day?
No, I tried that because I like routines and things like that, but then I wasn't creative enough when I said I make it a habit of every day. No, but when I have an idea, it just, so the last book, like I said, the first children's book, I had the idea, and then within 2 weeks I published it, because I was so obsessed with that. And it just all came out, and I did things, and it's between 0 and 6 years. So it's really a short story. It's not a lot of work,
Yeah.
character building or anything. But it's like that. Once I have an idea about the book, then I just need to get it out because I think also my head is exploding if I don't.
I love that. Do you self-publish or do you work
Yes.
with a publishing house? You self-publish?
No, I self-publish.
That's so good. And do you have creative activities that you like to do that kind of builds the inspiration, or do you just allow the inspiration to come to you and then you act on it when it arrives? I'm always
Yeah, I
curious.
use the latter, I would say. But then it's quite a creative process for me to write one because I use a lot of post-it notes to structure a book
Yeah,
and things like that. But then most of them were like business books, and not business books, some are business books, but let's say non-fictional books. So I would say a bit easier to write than fictional books because there you need to build characters. Actually, I'm
sure.
writing on one for the last 10 years that I might publish at some point. But otherwise, it's like a wall full of post-it notes that is outlining my book, and I move them around to make sure also I don't double
Mm,
content, and where does that fit best, and how does it, and does it flow well enough. And then I put basically numbers on the post-it notes and take them off the wall, and then I have a big pile of post-it notes, which is basically the book. And then in the past, I used to go away and just write them in 2 or 3 weeks. Just
yeah.
write, and there I wrote every day because I already had everything there on the post-it notes and just had to write them. And people always tell me as well when they read my books, it's like having a one-to-one with me or having a conversation because I write the way I speak. I'm not caring too much about specific structure or anything. And I write everything in English actually, even though I'm German, but I'm out of Germany for so long and
Yeah.
I'm just speaking English for 14 years that it's easier for me to write in English rather than in my native language.
Isn't it fascinating how the brain starts to shift in terms of how you think? And
Mm.
sometimes I had a coaching client, and he was originally from Morocco, and he said English was like what he thought of for business. And when he thought of the arts or culture or whatever, he spoke in French and thought in French. And then it was interesting just to see the
Yeah.
way the brain works sometimes. And it's interesting that maybe over time you started thinking more in English, especially as a writer. Do you identify primarily as a writer first and foremost, or is it just one of many passions that you identify with?
One of many things.
Mm-hmm.
I would say
Yeah.
a creator, communicator, because again, it
Yeah.
comes down to that because yeah, I just need to communicate that and love communicating with people, getting feedback, listening to people's story,
Mm.
exploring other people's views and things like that. Fascinating.
Yeah. When did you start podcasting?
3 years ago, pretty much exactly 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, maybe.
What have you learned through that?
It was like, oh, I always wanted to do a podcast, and it took me about 2, 3 years to understand which one I want to do and what I want to do. And sorry, what was your question? What I've learned?
Yeah, what have you learned about yourself and also just from the guests that you've interviewed?
So much. It's the best way to learn because it depends, of course, on what kind of topics, but I know that we can learn from every single person that we talk to. Children, adults,
Mm-hmm.
elderly, whatever age or something, there's always something to learn. Also, if we look at societal ranking, I don't know if someone wants to talk about that. I really believe that, first of all, we should have respect for everyone. Just respect is not something that needs to be earned. And that
Yeah.
also means that you can learn from everyone something. And it's so important to keep eyes and ears open when someone speaks rather than just speaking at someone. And that's exactly the podcast. It's like this one, it's like easy conversations and so many things I've learned. It's unbelievable. What I discovered about myself is that, again, it's a lot to do as well that comes with that. So it's something maybe at some point also I learned, okay, I outsource certain things because it's
Yeah.
taking a lot of time and I focus on many other things, but it's incredible. It was a really good way for me to test a lot of people that I then worked with further. So either I became a client, they became a client, or we collaborated in projects.
Yeah. It just opens up the world. If I find that like you just open up this world of people who are interesting and curious and like you, I find that I learn something from every single person and their experience. So if people wanted to work with you, Christine, what is the best way that they can get a hold of you? Like where are you most active?
So I'm on social media. I'm most active on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn would be the go-to thing. That's also where you can just connect with me. You can go to one of my websites. So I have creativestartupacademy.com or letstalk.training. So these are my two companies basically, and there you find always the link to my LinkedIn that you can connect me to.
Wonderful. Perfect. And the final question I ask all my guests is, what does it mean to you to live the width of your life?
We talked a lot about happiness. So doing what makes me happy more often, because we can't
Mhm.
do it all the time. I do understand we have a life, we need to work, we need to make money, we need to pay the rent, and this is just like how life works. And sometimes we need to do things that we don't enjoy as much. But again, joy is not the same as happiness. Taking time for yourself and for your loved ones, which I didn't do in the past a lot until everything happened. Not dwelling on things is really important, I think. And that means on negative things, to not widen those. Dwelling on good things is actually good for your happiness. And trying to see things in a positive light, even if that's not easy. I tend to also look back at things like what we talked about to say, actually, there's something good that came out of that. And everyone is perfect the way they are. And they are the way they are because of things that happen to them and with them and what they made happen. But yeah, these would be maybe the things I would say.
That's beautiful. I really enjoy that. Thank you so much for coming on today. I just really enjoyed our conversation, and thanks for the great work that you are doing in the world. We
Thank you.
all need a little extra support. And for those that are interested, definitely check out Christine on LinkedIn. I'll include all the details in the show notes and just wish you continued success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.